Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining the AI Insight webinar, AI Insight for RIAs. I'd like to start by introducing Michelle Brown, Vice President of National Sales and Client Engagement. Michelle?
Thank you, Jen, and thank you all for attending. Our next monthly webinar is on July 24th at 4 p.m. Eastern and is focused on how the AI Insight platform is helping financial advisors utilize alternative investments in their broker-dealer business. Visit AIinsight.com to register, as well as to find additional information on our previously recorded monthly webinars. Today's webinar is focused on how AI Insight helps RIAs conduct research and due diligence on alternative investments. In terms of the agenda, before I introduce the panelists, I think it would be helpful to show you a few actual screenshots of some of the tools and features RIAs are using on the platform to make their alternative investment research and due diligence more efficient. Then we will hear from our esteemed panelists, followed by a Q&A session, and then wrap it up with subscription options. AI Insight is an independent source for alternative investment research. Our CEO, Sherry Cook, started the platform in 2005 on the illiquid alternative side, and we recently expanded our research to include alternative investment mutual funds. Our three primary objectives are that we offer a centralized database on alternative investment products, we provide consistent prospectus-based training and education at the product-specific level, and finally, we provide a paper trail for compliance purposes by tracking all of your activity on the platform. We currently have over 50,000 financial advisors using the site, over 250 open offerings. Some examples of investment types are listed here, and over 1,000 closed offerings on the platform. This is actually our RIA portal homepage, the dashboard. And from here, RIAs can access these resources for research and due diligence on every alternative investment program on our platform. Our AI Insight program analyst team gathers information from the alternative investments offering documents and then distills that information down to the most important data points, creating a variety of summary and research reports to support and document your investment recommendations. Each time you access one of these here along the top, your research, due diligence, and educational activities will be documented in your individual compliance log. Within our database of programs, we have very detailed fee information. This program fee and expense report was created to help you quickly review an alternative investment fees and expenses compared to its peers, including industry rankings. We also created a mean and median for each fee category to help you determine whether they are reasonable or not. One of our most popular research tools on our platform is our Comparative Reports, which gives you the ability to conduct side-by-side analysis of alternative investments based on criteria that are most important to your due diligence process. With over 250 alternative investments on the AI Insight platform, this report can save you time gathering data on multiple programs during your due diligence process or for an investment committee meeting. Through our relationships with a number of independent due diligence firms, you will have the ability to actually request an alternative investment due diligence report directly from the platform. If you would like to take a deeper dive on any of these tools and features, we are more than happy to schedule an actual RIA platform demo with you. Just get in touch with me after the call. Now we are going to transition to our panel discussion, so you can hear directly from two industry influencers and understand how they are utilizing alternative investments and how the AI Insight platform has enhanced their research, due diligence, and educational resources. I would first like to introduce you to Vali Nasr, CEO of Claraphi Advisory Network. Vali has over 30 years of experience in broker-dealer and investment management and accounting. Welcome, Vali, and thank you for being with us today. Next, I would like to introduce Darren Whissen, founder and president of Atomi Financial Group. Darren has more than 16 years of experience in the financial services industry. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today, Darren. To start things off, welcome. To start things off, can you both provide an overview of your firm and how you utilize alternative investment? Darren, are you available? Would you like to kick things off there?
I am. So, Atomi Financial Group, at its core is a pure play wealth management firm. We do all the standard things that other wealth managers do, financial planning and tax mitigation strategies and so forth. When it comes to the investment side, though, we were purpose built to work with alternative investments. In other words, our investment philosophy very much mirrors what you would see at the larger endowments. And in that regard, most of our clients are going to have significant allocations into quote-unquote alternative investments. Although when we generally get, 50, 60% of our clients' investable net worth into alternative investments, we stop calling it alternative because that's the core part of their portfolio. And most of our clients are coming to us because that's exactly the type of investments they want in their portfolio. In other words, they want to have an overweight in real assets and an underweight in liquid securities such as stocks and bonds. To do that, though, we had to think of it in terms of a portfolio approach like you would in the other investments that you'd normally do. But we couldn't start with asset classes because asset classes didn't give us an appropriate risk return profile. So what we did is we devised kind of a schematic, and we call it asset strategies. And within asset strategies, we have 3 classes, and then within those, we have subclasses. So, and what we found is that every alternative investment is going to essentially follow one of these or belong to one of these categories. So, under fixed income, we think of all alternative investments being either focused on fixed distributions, variable distributions, or opportunistic distributions. If we're moving into the equity income side, we like to think of all programs either being core plus, or value add in nature. And if we're at equity total return, we think all programs are generally going to fall into a growth or a speculative nature. And by categorizing all of these investments by these types of asset strategies, if you will, that allows us to create allocations to the portfolio, because now we can say, well, all things being equal, how much of our client needs core plus as an asset strategy. We make that allocation level, and then we go and shop for the investments that are going to ultimately fit into that category.
Great. All right. Thank you, Darren. And Vali, could you provide a brief overview of your firm and how you utilize alternative investments?
Sure, Michelle. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes. You're
okay.
great. Mm-hmm.
Good. Claraphi Advisory Network is a SEC registered investment advisor. And we also engage in various services, whether it's financial planning or tax mitigation, portfolio construction in general. Our approach to investment is basically trying to find out the client's needs, analyzing client's investment objectives, time horizon, and risk tolerance are key in trying to construct a proper portfolio for them. And from that perspective, when we put a model together, there are some cases that the models are still only liquid investments, but in most cases, we try to also include alternative investments. There's a lot of clients they're afraid of the markets. They don't want to have as much exposure to equities and the market volatility as we see it. And a lot of these alternative investments offer a great approach to reach those objectives, whether it's income, whether it's growth, or both, by using alternatives. So that's really how we incorporate alternatives into our models and create a one portfolio that, again, is generating the particular objective and objective within the time horizon with a particular risk tolerance for clients.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vali. And
Sure.
Darren, could you describe the due diligence steps that you take for alternative investments and how you utilize AI insight in this process, please?
Sure. So we've got a. I'm sorry, do you want me to go or do you want Vali to go?
Oh, I'm sorry, Darren. Go ahead. It's your turn.
That's okay, Vali. That's okay. We'll get it worked out. Yeah. So we've got a life cycle process and it's multiple steps, and obviously we don't have enough time to go into it today. But let me just highlight some of the key steps. And one of the first steps that we do in our due diligence life cycle is we set up a prioritization of who we want to complete our due diligence programs on. And as you would imagine, that's fundamentally based on what our needs are relative to our asset strategy. So if we're missing a program and, say, value add, then that's where we're going to look for programs first. So that always helps us with that prioritization. Beyond that, though, we prioritize based on the strength of the management team, what we call, the cost structure, the fees, and then ultimately the market cycle. And that's almost the reverse of how offerings are introduced to us, whereas they usually are trying to sell a market opportunity or an investment thesis, and then they work their way back into cost. For us, it's the reverse in terms of what we think is more important. Then we go into a preliminary screening, and this is a way of helping us standardize our intake process. And so we have a standardized, simple questionnaire that we ask all investment sponsors to fill out. It's on our website. And if anybody would like to see it and utilize it for themselves, they're welcome to it. If they just go to the contact tab on atomifinancial.com, they'll see the link for it, and they can certainly start to use it themselves. And what that does, though, that's a standardized set of questions that we want to know as we're doing our filtering. And what we find is that the collateral that sponsors put together offering often is missing critical information that an RIA may want to understand, such as, like, what kind of share classes do they have, or do they do a gross up? And if they do a gross up, are they also rebating back the dealer reallowance? Those types of things. So that lets us get a very quick view on those types of programs. Once we've established a priority and we've gone through the screening, part of our formal due diligence process, a more in-depth questionnaire and document checklist and so forth. And we use AI Insight kind of at 2 points. So as we're going through the screening process and the prioritization process, we're often trying to just measure out simple things like what are their fee structure, what's their cost structure versus their peers. So at a very quick glance, we can understand whether they're, in the ballpark or whether they're sort of outside the ballpark in respect to what they think are appropriate fees within their offering. As we get into our formalized due diligence process, again, this is where we can speed up our due diligence process by accessing a lot of the key metrics inside AI Insight that are buried somewhere deep inside the PPM. And so it's an ability for us to kind of quickly get to the essential information, use of proceeds, regulatory information, all that kind of fun stuff. Is it a little bit more accessible to us through the AI Insight platform? So it just speeds up our whole process. Assuming we get through those 2 steps, we get into the investment committee side, then it's about documenting our decisions and establishing our guidelines, if you will. And guidelines, I think, is always important for an RIA to have, because if you set a rule and you break the rule, the regulators get quite upset at you. But if you have a guideline, then you have a mechanism with which to handle any exceptions. Then you can be compliant while still being outside of your parameters. So as an example, we say we generally don't want to have more than 10% of any one program in a client's portfolio, 10% of a client's net worth in any one program, I should say. But if a client gets to 11 or 12%, that's okay. We just have an exception handling to it. But that's what we handle at the investment committee level is establish those overall guidelines.
Great, Darren. We appreciate that insight. And Vali, would you mind, describing the due diligence steps you take for alternative investments, and as well as how you utilize AI Insight in your process?
Sure, Michelle. I hope you can all hear me better.
That's much better. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, our process basically involves 4 separate steps. The first step is trying to find the right product that we would like to have in our portfolios or as our inventory, whether it's real estate, private equity, oil and gas, or whatnot. The second step is to send out a questionnaire. We have a questionnaire of about 15 questions that we ask each sponsor to answer, and then we take those answers to our investment committee and decide whether this product is suitable or worthwhile for us to have, and we have enough clients that we can allocate to the portfolio. And as I mentioned earlier, asset allocation is a major problem, a major issue with us. So we need to make sure that each product can get about maybe 2%, 3%, not more than 5% allocation within a overall portfolio construction. So once we have done that and we agree that we want to move forward, then we engage in trying to get to know the principals of the firm. The people are very important to us. And I want to make sure that I look people in the eyes and know who they are, what is the purpose for them to do the business they're doing, and how we can get along, and generally the flow of information, how will that work. And at that same time, we also search through AI Insight and see what kind of information they have on any particular companies we want to bring on. And then, of course, once that we're past that stage, we have analysts that pour over the PPM, the financials, and start coming asking more questions and going back and forth with the sponsors and making sure that we have everything tied down and we answers. And then we bring on the program and how it's available to be allocated to. That's generally our process. And the process takes anywhere from, 8 weeks to 12 to 15 weeks. So it is a process. And on the advisory side, at fiduciary, we never do anything. Time is on our side. If someone comes to us and says, I only have $10 million left and you got to get in this, forget it. It's not our kind of deal. We don't do it. We need to have some longevity and know that it's going to take about a year or so before the product gets full, and we then bring it on and allocate to it. Now, we also always request at least one, mostly two outside or third-party reports, whether it's a MIC or a Buttonwood or whoever it is. And those are very important to make sure that there are no negatives within those reports. And again, in this business, there are enough risk already in the investing in these. So you want to make sure that there are no problems with the people, there's no problem with the financials, there's no problem with the actual write-up, the expenses, and so on. All those things have to be in line and make sense before we move forward and do the allocation. Now, the other major part of AI Insight that we use is the testing part, which is amazing. I really love that part of AI Insight, and we actually commission every advisor or solicitor that works with Claraphi and wants to be able to use alternatives in building their portfolios to take a test on the approved products that are on the system.
Great, Vali.
Thank you.
Great. And Darren, would you say that is there an AI Insight tool in particular that you find most helpful when doing your research?
Yeah. So for us, it's the cost and fee comparison tool where we can see their expenses side by side with other peers. That for us is what I would see is the most valuable tool because it definitely helps us get perspective when otherwise when you're looking at these underlying expenses, standalone they don't have a context. They don't really know if that's good or bad yet until you have a good idea of how that is being measured out. against a certain set of peer groups. And of course, we always take it with a grain of salt, I mean, because sometimes the programs are different enough to justify different expenses. But that's a great place, at least for us, to get a good idea. When someone says they have, an X% O&O, is that good? Is that bad? What does that mean? I want to know what that means relative to at least 4 or 5 other programs. And I don't want to have to dig through 4 or 5 other PPMs to come up with that comparative.
Yep, I can completely relate, and definitely a time saver for sure. And Vali, is there any particular feature on the site that you would say, really saves you time or makes you more efficient for you now compared to the process you were using before you had access to AI Insight?
Well, I think the testing process is invaluable to us.
Okay.
The ability to be able to use that is huge. And also, all the other information about the products that we like, going through and finding it a lot easier to have a third party that has that information for us to use.
Okay, great. And, with the remaining time that we have left, I just want to provide an opportunity for our attendees to ask you both questions. Jen, can you please provide any questions from the audience, please?
Yeah, I have one question. I guess this would go to both of you. Are there any other benefits of the AI Insight platform you each feel might be helpful for other RIAs on this call?
Well,
Vali, do you want to start?
I think as a matter of knowing the programs and knowing what you're offering your clients, I think going through the testing process can save you a lot of time and allow you to look a lot smarter in front of your clients. To me, that's the best, one of the best features of AI Insight. And the people behind AI Insight, they've been great. They're very helpful. If you have questions and you want to talk to them, I think they're very, very nice, knowledgeable.
Thank you, Vali. Hands down, we have a great team, and it's also a great place to work. And Darren, would you have anything to add there in terms of just from an efficiency standpoint before you started using AI, with your process? Just anything to add as well?
Yeah. So I mean, for us, it's how do you get a handle on the universe of alternative investments, particularly when it's so large and so fragmented. And so, what we're trying to do as much as possible is collate down a lot of noise into useful information. And what we have found that we've started to use now that we weren't really using in the beginning was the ability to look for programs that met our criteria using the AI Insight. So we're being more proactive in our search for the programs as opposed to being reactive and waiting for national accounts or a wholesaler to contact us and start the engagement process. So that's something that's new to us, and we're still kind of developing out exactly how we do that. But if I'm going to give advice to an RIA on the call, I would say is, how are you ultimately determining what programs you're going to use? And if it's solely based on a reaction or, a response to people soliciting to you, you may be missing out on some interesting opportunities that you need to go look for. But where do you do that, right? Where do you start? And so for us, we're starting to use AI Insight in that capacity.
Great. All right. Well, a huge thank you, Vali and Darren, for your participation today. We at AI Insight thoroughly enjoy working with you both. And again, thank you so much for your time. And just to let everyone know, if you are interested in subscribing to the AI Insight platform, please visit AIinsight.com. You can click Get Started in the upper right corner, and from there you can schedule a personalized tour of the platform or subscribe immediately. An individual subscription is $400 a year, and group subscriptions are also available. Thank you all for attending today's webinar, and please contact me directly if you would like more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.